Welcome back to Your Story Medicine. Today I am with Jose Richard Aviles, who is a social worker, urban planner, and artist based in South Central. Aviles' work is centered around the intersections between space, place, and the body. Aviles believes that dance is the magic of body and spirit coming together in order to combat the audacity of the ego. Hello, Jose.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon. It's so funny when you read that. I was like, who do I think I was? The audacity of the ego. Oh,
You are all the things, and you continuously blow my mind with all the magic and the medicine it is you put out there in the world. So, okay, first of all, tell us where is it that you're calling from now? And also, in your own words, if you want to expand on how is it that you would describe your medicine?
yeah. So I am calling from my room in South Central Los Angeles, land of the Tongva people and Shumish people and folks. So I'm calling from LA. Oh,
Hey!
and my medicine. You know what? To be frank with you, I think my biggest medicine is my abundance in love. Like literally everything I do from art to being a planner is rooted in love. Like I just love hard. And I think I've worked very hard over the last couple of years to really just sit with that and sit comfortably with the fact that I love my partners hard, I love my community hard, I love my people hard, I love just as hard. I just fucking love. And I don't know where that comes from, but I think that that is my biggest medicine. And I will also say that my medicine is my smile. I feel like smiles are a gift in body, mind, and spirit. And when you give a genuine smile, you literally just see it happen in someone else's body. And yes, we talk about that it's like this sort of like neurological response, but at the same time, it's like, yo, that's also magic. Like, you can't explain where this is coming from
Yes.
because it's magic and that's okay.
Yeah, our ancestors knew about this stuff, and then suddenly the scientists were like, hey, actually, we have some studies that show that this stuff does work. Like, okay, side note. So, something that I love to talk about is heart coherence. I don't know if you're familiar with that, like the heart frequency. And so, in my spiritual practice, as somebody who was raised as a Buddhist, we talk about metta love, METTA, which means loving kindness. And with a heart coherence or heart frequency, it's like, okay, our hearts can emanate a magnetic frequency that can extend as far out as like 8 or 10 feet. And even more so if we are intentionally cultivating this love within us, generating it from within and allowing it to extend outwards to everybody. And then somebody recently posted a video in a group of these doctors that straight up dissected a heart and was like, hey, actually, there is this thing that pulsates electromagnetic frequencies. I was like, dude, did you really have to cut up a heart in order to figure that out? Our ancestors knew this stuff.
Yo, so when we talk about, I've been having a lot of conversations with people around what like the greatest sins of humanity have been. And literally they all come down to white people. But like from like the transatlantic slave trade, right? Like, of course, the biggest sin of all human history. The Cartesian model, like the Cartesian model is what created the scalpel. Is it? That's a scalpel because it's not the scapula. The scapula is a shoulder thing, but the scalpel,
I
the
studied
scalp,
theater. I don't know.
the thing that you used to cut during surgery.
The knife.
the knife, the knife on Grey's Anatomy. But like all these concepts, right, that we need to discover and deconstruct and really to understand. And it's like, well, you already fucked up the entire system by deconstructing and not being able to step away from and like just getting the bird's eye view. Can we see that? The same thing happens a lot with hugs. I love hugs, and how close you bring people in signifies. And you hug someone, at least I've been taught that you hug someone until they're relaxed. And to me, that's always a conversation that finally the spirits have met and have allowed for this conversation to occur. And then science will tell you that yes, putting pressure on the parasympathetic nervous system calms people down. And it's like, yeah, that's just spirits talking. They're called hugs.
But let me find bigger intellectual jargon to justify it. So let's
That's
talk
right.
about reclamation. Okay,
Yeah.
everything that you have been posting on social media has been such profound medicine in the ways that you are also decolonizing and documenting your own journey of essentially coming back home to ourselves. And one of the things that you posted is I may not have a connection to my indigenous ancestors, but I know they live in me because I see them in the pigment of my skin. Being an urban planner is not about development. It's about defending soil in the hopes of healing curses long before me in the name of my ancestors. So tell us more about your ancestral lineage and how this has influenced your medicine, your path as an urban planner, as an artist, as all the things. And honestly, we just need to straight up make a movie about your life, but let's just start there.
Um, well, it's interesting because I've been reconnecting back with my own spiritual practice, and a lot of it is reconnecting with ancestry, right? And so, funny to that post, somebody responded that I that to be mindful, right? That this idea of speaking of pigments and ancestry can kind of trigger some blood quantums for some folks, and I totally understand where they were coming from, and I was like, that's not my intention, and I was like,
Yeah.
maybe my wording was a little off, and I apologize for that, but my intention was literally around the fact that like I have brown skin, like, and I have to say that very matter of fact because society has worked so fucking hard to tell me that my brown skin is not enough, that it's not beautiful. And then there's so many complexes, right? What it means to be brown and Latino and all the other things that go with it, right? Like, so I don't necessarily identify with Latino. I'm not offended by the word Latino. I understand the oppression that comes with being Latino and I understand the context. But in recent years, I've mostly identified as brown because I need to uplift the tone of my skin. Like
Yes.
I don't know how to explain it, but being like, I'm fucking brown. Like it's just who I am. And so for me, that's been wonderful and powerful. And I do acknowledge also the way colonization works, right? That we do have an ancestry of colonizers and we also have this ancestry of indigeneity. I'm just honored and blessed that my indigenous ancestors came out more than the other ones. And so that's kind of me being like, oh, I'm glad I'm not a fair skinned Latino. um, and so it comes from a lot of those places for sure. And I think as an urban planner specifically, there's just no room in urban planner for multilinear thinking, right? With multiplicity, and that's sort of a framework that comes from indigenous backgrounds, right? Interdependency, that we are one with the built environment. We are not observers. There goes again this idea of deconstructing and tearing down, and that's that urban planner that white men have like conditioned us to think through. And a lot of folks don't sit with the fact that urban planning is a product of settler colonialism. Like literally, slave owners were urban planners, and nobody
Ooh,
in that conversation. I know, right? And I was like, oh,
yeah, but
but
and well, also I just think about so many of us who are children of immigrants or descendants of the original caretakers of this land who go and obtain that higher education, whether it is as a therapist, as an urban planner like you, as a doctor, how we take on somewhat the mentality and the role of the oppressor, of the colonizer, with the intention, though, of bringing that back to our communities and then returning to what our ancestors knew all along. It's kind of messed up.
no,
But okay, continue.
it totally is, right? Because we are definitely infiltrators, right? Or malinches. And so really people call me malinche all the time and I take on the role of a malinche for being an infiltrator. But the having to sit with that double burden, right? Of being the cultural prototype as someone who is first generation, a child of immigrants, having to reconcile with the fact that my parents were asked to asking me to dream in a white supremacist way, right? In a way of upward mobility. Go get your degree so that you can have what we didn't have. And those are all traumas of white supremacy. And then here I have to be like, but yo, this is like really horrible. And I'm not going to perpetuate that same system. Yet I still have two masters. So it's like reconciling with what I'm doing and how I'm doing to make things better. And I think constantly going back of bringing it back to ancestors and being like, well, maybe especially now that I'm walking this path and connecting more with my egun and honoring them and what that means and how they have blessed me, it is my responsibility to heal curses that come long before me. And that's where that post is coming from, right? And so more tangibly, like I don't know what my indigenous ancestry looks like or what it's like. I mean, maybe it's connected to Michoacan, where my mom is from, but I still then don't know if there was diaspora within her family before that. There's just no way of knowing and reconciling with the fact that we can't travel back in time. It's a very hard thing, I think, to sit with. But I do know that I am here now and that I have this understanding that I can do something better and connect. It's like I was born on the land, on like Tongva land. So does that mean that I communicate and create community with Tongva folks who are here today and say, what can I do with these resources and to leverage this power to help this community? Like maybe we were cousins, like, like maybe my ancestors, like my indigenous ancestors, would be very proud of me for defending indigenous communities in this lifetime, in this moment. Because I think a lot of the times what happens is that we, as folks who have indigenous ancestry, will romanticize it a little bit too much and forget that there is work that still needs to be happening now, that land stewardship can happen now, that like repatriation of communities can happen now, as opposed to sitting in the what. And this is like folks who just read too damn much and don't get on the streets.
Oh,
So all those things.
and I think I admire so many things about you. And one of the things that I appreciate the most is how you still know your inner child. Actually, I didn't even know that you had these double master's degrees. The first time I met you, the first time I saw you was actually in a performance. I think was it with Patrice? Was it that play? Oh, I know that okay. Well, I know that I've seen you perform other times before, and I have just been like, oh my gosh, I think I just birthed a baby watching this performance. Dancing, spoken word, and also you did a TEDx talk as well, and you're constantly creating. So honestly, I just thought that you were a full-time artist. Side note, Jose and I were actually in another production together, which was so fun, and we don't know if that production will ever see the light of day, but I just really got to know you intimately as an artist. And when I think about what it means to be an artist, it's not about being able to create this art piece that is then meant to be consumed by others. It's more so it's a ritual, it's a remembrance, it is a prayer to the ones who came before us and to the people who we are becoming. And so you are constantly in your practice. Urban planning just happens to be one of the many things that you do. And so you are, yes, a poet as well, a storyteller. So tell us about your most recent offering.
Yeah, so there's Oh, thank you. First, let me just say thank you. I think that was a very beautiful way of consolidating everything that I do and that I am, and I'm grateful. I'm part of healing is also saying thank you to compliments, right?
Hmm.
And so thank you. I think I've spent my entire life being told everything that I'm not and everything that I shouldn't be. That to be told what I am and what I should be is kind of, it still makes me,
You're so magical. You're made of magic, and
Oh,
obviously it speaks to why, uh, like your following has just grown so much because you are a walking piece of art.
yeah.
That's it. You are a walking ritual.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll say Okay, so one thing, yes, that has happened. In the last couple of months, there has been like a 200% increase in like my Instagram followers. Is this how you know that I also come from like a background of numbers and shit? Because I'm like 200%. But and in the beginning, I sat with a lot of guilt, and I think guilt is going to be a constant motif in my current practice. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
Yeah.
I was like, "Yo, why are my dreams coming true in the middle of a global pandemic?"
Oh, so many of us, by the way. It's
You
happening.
know. And then I had a partner say, "Richard, don't you think that that's how it's meant to happen?" And I was like, oh my God, maybe. And now that I think about it, I think so. And I think the the lesson of my life is that my purpose on this world is to be a healer. And I just happen that I am a healer whose medium is art. And that being said, I've learned to detach myself from the work. In the beginning, when I did the TEDx talk, I said that I was looking for the masterpiece in all the wrong places because I am the masterpiece, right? And just being myself and being unapologetically me was the art in itself. And so then I just constantly joke. I see other artists, especially gay men artists, gay white men, who do a lot of like erotica. And I'm like, yo, your penis politic is so outdated. Like, this is no longer novel. This is not organic. Like, yeah, the archetype of a shirtless white man is hella outdated. So whatever. And so I think of my work of creating the counter narrative, right? Everything we've known to be normal, I am not. So my job is to be abnormal, unapologetically, and in juxtaposition to the world, I become a piece of art. But what is happening now is that, again, my work is not mine anymore because, like, literally how people are reacting to, or the conversation that I had with someone about the blood quantums and all that, like, I'm working very hard, and I know that my intention will always be good. I don't think I'm a malevolent person, though there have been moments where we all have our dark sides, and you're like, oh girl, but like, and I'm
Hmm.
like, but that's not me. um and so rather than thinking a lot about my intent, like I know it will always be good, I'm just trying to ensure that the impact is in alignment with the intent in ways that I wasn't before, because now the impact is so much greater. So it's
Especially with everything online as well. It's like, we talked earlier about the medicine behind just that human touch, that frequency that gets transferred when we are within proximity to each other, which I believe we can still feel over interactions such as this. We're having this conversation over Zoom right now, but when so much of the triggers and the debate is happening in comments, it's like,
we're
have we
becoming
forgotten?
we are becoming desensitized to touch, which is the thing
Oof.
that reminds me that we are people. Like, that's the thing I loved about dance. I love touching people because just as much as I'm touching you, you're touching me. And
Yeah.
there's a symbiotic relationship that happens between bodies in dance. I'm grateful for the people in my life that I do get to touch. Um, in these circumstances, and it's my immediate family and a partner, really. But yeah, I remember the first time I hugged them and I cried. And I was like, and it was so funny because they were like, oh my God, I wanted to hug you too. And I was like, bitch, we're always on the same page. So I'm glad. Um, we're going so many
Yeah.
places. So the most recent offering that I have is Semilla. And Semilla is my first publication as a poet. And that's the other
Oh,
thing. People are like, you're a poet? And I was like, I didn't know either.
yes.
But a lot of it is just trusting this. This has been so shut down in so many ways for being too femme, for being too brown, for being too thick, all these too many's, and this voice got dimmed. And all of a sudden, I found a way to begin to listen to that voice, and now I'm letting her speak. And
Mm.
so this book of poems called Semilla also includes some photographs, and I wanted to share how saw the world, from bodies to built environment to flowers, and it's beautiful.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so Semilla is this book of poetry, and of course, given the current conditions, I don't know when I'll be able to like perform this. So in as a result, there's also something called Semilla la Quinceanera, and it's basically this doble quince digital performance to celebrate my 30th birthday.
Oh, you're in your Saturn.
Yeah. I've been in my Saturn the last 3 years because Saturn came in Capricorn this cycle, and Saturn is the ruling planet of a Capricorn, and she's a Capricorn, so it's like a hot mess, and it's about to end, yo. Like I don't know if people are not realizing that Saturn's return is about to end, and the paradigm shift is about to like coalesce and come together, and I'm like, y'all think November is about to be wild? Don't even worry about December and then January.
Mhm.
Cap season is gonna be an interesting season because we are the gatekeepers of time. You end the year with us and you start the year with us. So
Mm.
Capricorns to me, it's like that's why we're half goat, half fish. You know, we're just versatile.
Oh, yeah, and then after that, you can go back to blaming other retrogrades, but
Right, right,
this
right.
is
Oh, I thought you were gonna say after that you can go back to blaming Pisces. I mean Aquarius. I'm like, because I blame Pisces all the time. Girl, I tried to date a Pisces and it was a hot mess.
So back to Samia's. Tell
Yeah,
us more about this beautiful offering and what inspired you to create this in these times.
yeah, so Semilla. So Semilla, literally the first poem that I wrote is called Semilla, and it came after I had hooked up with a friend who I have known for 10 years, and I was the first queer in their life, I think, maybe, or the first queer person. No, I was because they told me. But I thought about that story and I was like, yo, this is a pattern in my life. I'm the first queer in a lot of men's lives, and I'm like, there is a burden, a curse, and a gift in being all this. So Semilla, the first poems were about that. Because Semilla is Spanish for seed, and I thought it was a fun little double entendre. And then
Yeah.
I realized that no, that there's so many firsts in my lives. My
Mhm.
first heartbreaks, and then my nephew was born, and then this overwhelming sense of love came into me, and like I've discovered love at first sight for the very first time. I fell in love with my sister as my sister all over again, and I was like, yo, this is so trippy. Like, what is this? So then Semilla became a series of poems about that. Spring in particularly, the book is divided into 4 chapters, one for each season, and each season has a theme. Fall is all about change, winter is about death, summer is about, summer, hot girl summer, and like thoughts, and then spring is about hope and all these different things. But I thought a lot about, the book is literally dedicated to my nephew, and I hope that when I pass away, this is what my nephew is going to read about me and say, this was
Yes.
my uncle. And to me, that is very powerful and important, to the point that there were actually pictures of my nephew in the book, and I took them out very last minute. Like literally the last proof, I took them out because I did not feel comfortable with my nephew being immortalized in this way without asking for their consent, and they're one. But I was like, no, there's some intimacies that are meant to be between us, and that's okay. So yeah, that's Semilla. There's so many great poems, and then the Doble Quince, it's going to literally be videos of a quinceañera party, like from the entrada, the baile sorpresa. There's going to be poetry readings. There's going to
Mm.
be dancing. I'm super excited. And so all of the funds that people, there's a GoFundMe where people are buying signed copies of the book, because I then get to sign the copies and mail them out, and all the funds go to the performance. So it's really exciting to kind of see it come to fruition. And it's literally, we film next month, and so I am like, oh my god, it's November 2nd, and I'm like deadline, like weeks behind. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things. Like the heels just got here the other day. I finally found the designer. I send the first payment in for the clothes to tomorrow. So it's like a whole whirlwind.
I'm so grateful that we get to witness the blossoming of this project. Did you have a quinceañera?
You know what? I didn't have a quinceañera, but I came out in so many of them. Like, oh look, it's funny because we're right here. But I came out in so many quinceañeras as a chambelan, and I still have.
Oh, amazing. For those of you who are listening, you got to come and watch the video to see these pictures, or I will attach them in the show notes.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll see if I can scan them and I'll send them to you. That'd be hilarious. But
Amazing.
literally, I still have all these souvenirs from when I was a chambelan, and I came out in so many that it was this thing of like, of course, then there is this practice of the doble quince when you turn 30 that a lot of queer folks have
Oh,
started to use, right? So, doble
I had
quince.
no idea.
Mhm. And it just became an excuse for a lot of queer bodies to have their own quinceañeras, because this is a practice that it's only limited, what's mostly has been historically limited to young girls, or
Yeah.
bodies that we perceive as women. And it's supposed to be a rite of passage from childhood to adulthood.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, it was kind of just like an excuse to celebrate my 30th birthday. And then I thought a little bit more about the rite of passage, and I realized that no, Semilla is my rite of passage as an artist. I have taken my work to another level. I don't know what it means, but I am a different artist than I was when I first started like 7 years ago, right? When I
Yeah.
started becoming a professional artist, whatever that means. Um, I'm in a different place now, and I have a little repertoire and to showcase and to credit, and like, residency. It's been such a whirlwind. So more than anything, this is also a celebration for my own journey as an artist.
Yeah. What I love so much about how plants can teach us about shedding and resilience and just like composting is uh, well, like when I first dreamed about creating this series, the tagline is being rooted in times of change. And so as the outside world is in seemingly so much chaos, there's people like you, and I'm not going to deny myself as well. Like, this honestly has been my best year in my business and calling in the people who are in right alignment and people who are honestly waking up, realizing that, you know what, the government isn't going to save us. We are the ones that we've been praying for. What are the seeds we are going to plant today that will blossom into legacies and medicine for the next generation? But before we can do that, what needs to be released? What needs to be composted so that I can make room for fertile growth? So tell us, in your own process of composting, of shedding, of blooming, what is it that you have learned? And also, what is it that you have had to release?
Yeah, I make the joke that when I write my memoir, it's gonna be called "Cultivating Soil in the Soul," and it's gonna be about working on a farm in Wisconsin for a year, and literally the land teaching me a lot. And I think one of those lessons that I've learned. They still bring me with me everything and everything that I do. I think that my boss on the farm taught me that when you go into the harvest, you don't go thinking about the harvest. You don't go in thinking about how many pounds of pumpkin I'm gonna have this harvest, how the corn is going to come out. Literally, you just cultivate the soil and pray that whatever's going to happen has happened. You don't know if your harvest is going to come out and to be beautiful flowers or weeds are going to come out. You just cultivate the soil. And I think a lot of that phrase right there, cultivating the soil, which is what has gotten me to where I'm at. Like, there's never a lot of expectations for what I do. Like, I just did a performance art piece yesterday, um where I walked 12.2 miles in LA, and there was no expectation. But then I just cultivated the soil, and I say that I cultivated the soil in a way that it was like I knew I wasn't gonna get up on yesterday and just walk 13 miles. So for the last month, I've been walking on my own. I've been doing like a whole new like relationship to my body with food and mobility. And there's a whole situation happening there. And how people are receiving it just in one day, in 24 hours, has been so beautiful. So I think a lot of it has been the practice of finding slowness in time of urgency is a magic, and it's an art form. And I think art does that for me, like to think and stop through and think like, no, but did you think about the shoes, the dress, like all the little details that go into creating art is so important for me, at least, because it slows me down. There's something very because my mind is the mind of 1,000 bodies, and I have to remind myself that I'm one body. Because if it were just my mind leading my this whole situation, then I'd be so overwhelmed and burnt out, which is where I've been before. But now it's like my body being like the leader and being like, nah, girl, calm down. And so there's an opportunity in art and in planning that my mind is allowed to slow down. So then there's this alignment that happens with my body. One thing I'm learning to release. Oh, Dios santísimo. Ay, Dios, I don't know what I'm releasing. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, I'm learning to release the fact that historically I've always chosen everyone else's happiness before mine. um Releasing the fact that there has been a history of dysphoria in my body, not around gender but more about image. And I'm very confident in my body image, but there is some like deep planted seeds that I never knew existed, right? Like there, as I am doing a lot of the work that I'm doing now around like working out and like, and I'm not even working out for aesthetic reasons. I'm just doing it for the relationship between my body and I, and meal prepping. Like I'm realizing that I don't have all the time in the world. And it happens because I've overbooked myself with things that are outside of my body, meaning writing, meetings, things that are very heady and spiritual, but that are not centered in the body. And now all of a sudden that I have to do this workout, that I have to do this meal prepping, my time is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And it's because I've overwhelmed it with things that involve the mind and not with things that involve the body. So I'm learning to release that and realize that I've overcommitted my heart and my spirit for others, but never enough for me. And so I'm learning to release that.
Oh, I so feel this, especially as somebody who is guiding other women of color, especially to prioritize themselves. One of the activities that I have everybody do is to block out time in their calendar, but to label it with the desired outcome versus the task. So if in the morning your intention is to quote unquote work out, what is the main intention and the outcome behind it? It's to cultivate that deeper relationship with your body. If you aspire to write a book, then how is it that you are intentionally blocking out that time in your calendar to say I am reclaiming my inner author? But when we're able to do that, then we can see how much of our time we have been intentionally giving away to others.
Yeah, that
Ugh.
part.
And it's such a mind-blowing process, like, especially because I work with a lot of people who come from movement spaces. Suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I've cultivated so much of my time in like building this organization or volunteering for these multiple causes. And yet I question, are my dreams worth it? Especially if other people are suffering or if other people are depending on me. And what I've come to learn is that somebody's always going to need you. Somebody is always going to want your time and your energy. And so your boundaries are going to be so sacred. And one of the most beautiful and revolutionary things that you can do is embody the kind of ancestor you're calling forth.
You know what? And it's interesting that you say that because I really think that recently a lot of my framework and thinking has been shifted around that. Like I want to be a great ancestor. And it sounds really horrible and morbid to say that, right? Because it's like it's also coming to terms with the fact that when I am disposable and that I'm leaving anytime soon. Um not soon, but hopefully not soon.
Oh, I think it's just so beautiful though. Is it disposability when really if we are like walking plants, our body is going to compost, it's going to turn into soil that is then going to enrich what is to come next. And so I want to make sure that I am well nourished.
That
And
part.
like and when I think about you and the poetry, the book that you've written, all the work that you've done, it is with the intention that somebody like your nephew will know that they too can create their own legacy, their own story, and that they have somebody like you who's embodied what that can look like.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think that coming into that and coming into that alignment, I think that is my MO, right? Being very proud of leaving whatever it is that I leave. Well, there's actually a beautiful poem in the book that says, "When I die, sing to me las mañanitas." And las mañanitas is a Spanish version of a birthday. the birthday song, and there's a line in there that really just messes me up, and it says, "The day that you were born was the day that all the flowers were born." And
Mm.
so I think about that line and the messages of that line, and I say, when I die, sing that song for me because I'm just going
Yes.
home. You know?
Yes. So, with that being said, I would love it if you could share an excerpt from
Yes,
this as words of wisdom for us. Let's plant new seeds.
yes. I will share two short poems that I think are beautiful. This is called Avrasame. Hands are a manifestation of the soul. How close I bring you into me signifies how close I want you to my soul. Abrázame. There's this little moment that happens when the body sighs, it relaxes and eases into its own embrace. Abrázame. I never know how to say most of what I feel, so I hold you a little longer. I dig a little deeper. Abrázame. I sneak my hand in the liminal space of your nips and your arm, a breath from behind, armed interlaced with your chest. Abrázame. Wrapped in you, my core becomes truncated, my feet root into its own core, my hair skin flies off to meet the sky. Abrázame. Abrázame muy fuerte. And then this is the last one. Cuando yo me muera. Cuando yo me muera, cántenme las mañanitas y llorarán hasta que sus ojos no dejen de doler. You will cry until your eyes become deserts, but it's okay. Birds like me cannot be caged. Our love is too strong to be caged. Me pidieron que no me vaya, and I will remind you that I live within you. I live in the way your heart warms when you think of me. I live in the wind that embraces you the way my hugs once did. I live in the chirp of the birds singing the song of my laughter. I live in the eyes of children. Play is my strength. Qué linda será la mañana cuando vengan a despedirme. Así tenía que ser. Cuando yo me muera, don't cry. I am just going home.
Mm-mm-mm. Ah, such sweet medicine you embody.
Oh, thank you.
So, my dear, as a future ancestor in the making, what words of wisdom would you give to others to help guide them into planting fruitful seeds?
Yeah. I think slowly learning to calm down again the audacity of the ego. I think that the ego it's a beautiful defense mechanism when needed, but I think it's also a very dangerous weapon to use when not in alignment, right? And so I think of like finding joy, and the thing is like we don't know how to quantify joy, at least at least in the way that I think about it, but we know what it is. You know what I mean? Like, you know what's joy, and it's this feeling that just comes in from like inside of you that exerts out that you just want to scream and let the world know that you are feeling this. That is joy. Now, it might be an activity, there might be a partner, there might be something that brings you that feeling. But I think when I discovered that dance was my joy, I made a commitment to always create opportunities to feel that joy. And I think being able to find those opportunities for your own joy is very, very important. And second, and I would say like just leading through a place of love, and that's easier said than done because there are some
Yeah.
people who are not worth my love and who don't deserve my love.
Say
Uh,
that again.
you know, and at the same time, I think rather than thinking about changing and trying to love those hearts, I love harder those that do love me back, because then
Mm.
that's where I can expend that energy that I would have been lost somewhere else. So just come from a place of love, and laugh with yourself. If you can laugh with yourself and at yourself, you're doing something right. Because not sometimes, all the time, I laugh at myself and I'm like, girl, who are you? Like, you're just such a mess. Like, I think about all the random stuff in my life and I just laugh, and people are like, what are you laughing at? And I'm like, me. So laughter.
I feel this. And also, if you are feeling challenged with these things, finding or cultivating a community to do it alongside. I feel like so many of us have been conditioned to try to navigate about this path alone, and yet seeds cannot survive in isolation. So I would encourage everybody to go and follow Jose Richard Aviles at Soy Nalgona on
Yes.
Instagram and I'll attach that in the show notes. And lastly, where is it? How's it that we are going to hear about Doble Quince?
Yes, so everything is going to be posted. So I'm also getting ready for the launch of a YouTube channel and next for next year. I don't know what it's gonna be about, but I feel like apparently I just talk so much smack and stuff that I'm just gonna put it on a YouTube channel. So Semilla is gonna all be on IG on Instagram at Soy Nalgona, and then slowly I'll transition it over onto YouTube as well.
We will definitely follow your journey. Another thing that I want to say is that for anybody who is struggling with, I don't even know where to begin with my artistic practice, my creative practice, or choosing a career or whatever, I just, I come back to this mantra: do not doubt the seeds that you are planting today and what they will blossom into, because never in my life did I think that I would have this platform. I didn't know what it was going to be. And just like I'm sure with you, did you know that you were going to be writing a book, that you were going to be producing this? And yet every action you have taken has always determined what the next outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
So just say yes. Just don't be attached to the outcome, and know that you are being divinely guided on this
Mm,
path.
that part. That part.
Hmm. Thank you so much for joining me today, and to more seeds to be planted,
Yes, thank you for having me. I had a great time talking to you.
to be continued. Mwah.
Yes.